Hello everybody, welcome to our webinar, the final one for Learning at Work Week. And it's lovely to see some familiar names who might have been popping into some of our other sessions this week. We did performance motivation, human leadership, we did team flow yesterday, and we're ending with wellbeing today. So lovely to see some familiar names, and welcome to anybody who might be here for the first time. It's good to have you all with us, and we're super excited to be here. As I said, we're talking about supporting well-being and taking a bit more of a proactive approach. And just to introduce ourselves to get started, there's a couple of us here who are going to be leading the webinar with you. So my name is Holly Powell. You can see my photo there on the screen because I do not have a video camera on, so you can get a little sense for what I look like in a professionally taken photo, I have to add. But it's lovely to be with you, lead consultant here at Bailey & French. And I've got my colleague here, Dan, as well. Dan, do you want to say hi to everybody? I think Dan might be on mute, so we'll skip past that one. He'll be coming in shortly to take some of the content. But to introduce us here at Bailey & French, for those of you who don't know who we are exactly, we're a consultancy. We're based down in Brighton. Luckily, the sun is shining today. It was raining this morning, so hoping the sun stays. But you never know in Brighton. The weather is a little bit all over the place. And we're using positive psychology and sort of the latest research to support organisations with a range of different sort of problems and learning and development around leadership, team relationships, performance and well-being, hence the topics of our webinars this week. And ultimately, what we want to do, our biggest sort of passion and motivation is humanising the world of work. So as I said, we're discussing wellbeing today, and that's looking beyond just mental ill health and looking at that proactive support. And I will say that as far as webinars go, we're going to try and make this as interactive as possible. We want you to be answering some questions, sharing your thoughts, sharing your sort of perspectives, opinions. So it's going to be super interactive. So if you're able to use the question box, that's how we'll be asking you to submit sort of your answers. And I will say that you won't necessarily be able to see other people's answers in real time, only ourselves as the organisers can see them, but we will share with you afterwards a summary of what everyone else has said to each one of those questions. So you'll get a little cheat sheet following the session, and we are also recording this, and we'll send around the recording, which you can send to anybody else that you want, you know, who you think might be interested in the session. So that's just a little bit to get us started. And the first thing that we want to do is to start to think about a positive starter. So we use these in all of our workshops, all of our webinars, and also in a lot of our team meetings as well. And we want to start the session in a positive frame of mind, get each other talking and just really energize ourselves for the session. So I want you to start to think about the question on the screen. What 3 things are you feeling grateful for today? And as I said, using that question box to share your thoughts, share your answers to that. Would be so interested to see what everyone's feeling grateful for. With a big old group of people here, I'm sure there are a lot of different answers. And I'll kick us off really because I'm already unmuted and you can hear me. So what 3 things am I feeling grateful for today? Well, I'm feeling grateful that the sun is back. We've got a lovely festival thing that we're doing as a group at the weekend at Bailey & French. So hoping that the sun stays for that because we will be outside. And you know, getting muddy is not something that I fancy doing. So hoping the sun stays, very grateful that it's here. Also very grateful that I've got a lovely team around me. We've been working hard this week on these webinars, and it's been great to have sort of a really supportive team at work who are helping go through that as well. So those are a couple of things. I didn't do 3. I'm going to stick with 2 because I can see some other answers coming through in the question box, which I'll read through. So we've got the gorgeous spring weather and nature waking up. That's absolutely one. Some people on a day off, joining us on your day off. I love it. Thank you for that dedication and coming to listen to us when you could be outside. So absolutely appreciate that. I can see that we've also got food. love food, always grateful for food. That is a great answer. And family, friends, and good health. Always worth us reminding ourselves that we've got that in place to help and support us as well. And I can see that there's been a question asked as well in terms of getting the slides and the recordings. Absolutely, they will be sent around after the session. It might not be immediately after the session. There's a lot of people we need to reach out to, and we've been doing multiple webinars. So if there is a couple of days delay in you getting the recording, please bear with us and be patient, but absolutely we will be sending those through. So love that. We've got some others coming through, which again, I just want to recognise. So we've got a lovely person who's going on honeymoon at the weekend. So congratulations, amazing news. Hopefully you will be able to take the sun away with you wherever you're going. And the internet, we are grateful for the internet. It's connecting us all here together today. And we wouldn't be able to do this without the internet. So absolutely love that one. Thank you all for sharing. Hopefully that's re-energized you. The things that we're feeling grateful for, it's one of those things that even if you just do that once a day, every day, and just take that time to reflect on what you're feeling grateful for, this automatically supports our well-being and that sort of feeling of gratefulness and accomplishment and things like that. It's very supportive of well-being. So the perfect way to start our session today. So I'm going to move on, and we're going to look at the first question that we're going to cover, which is why is looking at well-being important? And really, I'm going to say up front that there's probably quite an obvious question. We're all here today because we're interested in well-being. We might work in well-being, but we all have our own well-being. So ultimately, it is a topic that connects us all and impacts us all. So it's probably a fairly obvious statement here, but it's good that we can share our insights and our thoughts, and you can learn from each other as well. And that's why we want to share around that chat feed after the session, so you can see what other people are saying and commenting on the topic. So we're going to start with just some stats about well-being. And again, some of these you might be familiar with. I'm sure you'll know many others as well. But again, it's just sort of placing us into the sense of why are we here? Why are we talking about well-being? Why does well-being still matter? I think it can sometimes be the case that we've talked about well-being a lot over the last 2 years with the COVID pandemic, and it feels like it might be dwindling off a little bit, and there might be other different focuses that people are looking at, whether that's leadership or perhaps DE&I, but well-being is still absolutely imperative that we focus on it, we do things to support it, and that we don't forget about well-being. So some stats on the screen there, which you can read, but just a couple that I feel are really personally important in terms of that nearly 60% of employees are feeling anxious at the moment, and absolutely everybody has some forms of stressors in their lives, whether you're a leader, whether you're not a leader, whether it's a stressor in your personal life, whether it's a stressor at work. Absolutely everybody has that experience within their life, and again, that's why well-being is so important. We also know that 1 in 6 people report experiencing a common mental health problem in a given week. 1 in 6, that is a huge number of people. That is a big stat. And that's just in 1 week. So what happens through 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, a year? How many people is that actually affecting? And we can also see that searches for mental health therapists near me have increased since August 2021. And that's really why we're here today, because as I said, we want to move beyond mental ill health in our discussion today and going forwards, but actually that means that we need to start supporting people before they have any problems. So before they feel the need that they need a therapist, before they go into mental ill health, we need to be supporting them regardless. And it could be that they're feeling okay, or they might be feeling quite happy, but keep supporting them at that point anyway, because then you're still going to maintain that, and we can keep on improving our well-being no matter where we're at. And last week was Mental Health Awareness Week for those that might not have necessarily known, and there was a focus on loneliness. So again, just reiterating that importance of why well-being is so important. So moving on, I've got a question for you. And as I said, this is all about hearing your thoughts as well as you hearing mine. So using the question box again, I want you to answer the question, why do you think well-being is important? Whether that's important to you personally, important to you within the workplace. What are your thoughts on this? How would you answer this question? What are the key things that stand out to you when you're thinking about well-being? For me, what I would say, why do I think well-being is important? I think because it's so inherently linked to everything we do. It's linked to our performance. It's linked to our ability to maintain relationships. It literally impacts on every single aspect of our life. And I think if we've got poor well-being, everything else suffers. So it's that for me is the answer, and I can see that again is resonating for some of you as well. So in the answers that are coming through in the question box, I can see it's absolutely fundamental for productivity at work. It's also important for staff retention, and someone's put it's just a good thing to do, and I love that. It really is as simple as that. Looking after your own and other people's well-being is simply just a good thing to do, and we're trying to humanize the world of work. We're all humans, and that is absolutely why it's so important. Well-being helps us live our best life. Absolutely, also love that one there, and we all want to be doing whatever we can to be living that best life. Some of the other answers as well, again, we'll share these round after the end of the session so you can read them all for yourselves in your own time, but keeping you grounded, helping you to keep things in perspective. If you didn't have that well-being, then nothing else can be done. So yeah, absolutely, it helps you to focus your energy, focus your attention, and do the things you need to do because you've got those resources, those sort of psychological resources, because your well-being is positive to help you do life ultimately. So absolutely. And as I said, I'm not surprised that the group here all sort of knew why well-being is important and why we're focusing on it. But it's been great to see your thoughts and your reflections on that one. And moving on just to really sort of finalize why we're looking at well-being today, and as I said, why we're looking at that proactive approach and not just focusing in on mental ill health. So you can see a little graph on the screen there. Again, for some of you, it might be a familiar graph. Some of you, it might be the first time that you're seeing it. It might be a little bit small on the screen, so I apologize if that's the case. But as I said, you'll get these sent around to you afterwards, so you'll be able to see it slightly bigger on the PowerPoint there. But what you can see here on the screen is the mental health spectrum, and we define it as sort of from -10 to 10, with sort of 0 roughly in the middle. So when we're talking about this scale, -10 is sort of that mental ill health. So you can see on this, we're looking at sort of that mental disorder stage where you need sort of your therapy and things like that to support you. Then you've got 0, which is sort of at your languishing stage. So this is sort of, you're not in mental ill health, but you're not sort of in positive well-being. And then we've got sort of from 0 to 10, this is where we start to move into mental wellness and ultimately where we all want to get to, which is flourishing. We all want to be flourishing, to be thriving, not just surviving. And that's what we want to do, is we recognize that there's this whole group of people. So you can see on the graph that the y-axis is showing percentage of the population. So you can see that actually most of the population are sitting in mental wellness. Which is great news for us, that actually a lot of people are feeling okay, feeling supported, feeling well. But that doesn't mean that we don't need to take action, because you can always do slightly better to move into that flourishing state, which is up near your 10. So we don't have to wait until you're below 0 to implement any initiatives to support your well-being or to take action. And in fact, if you wait until you're below 0, you might be a bit too late, and it might be harder to come back up to a mental wellness state than actually if you're supporting people in that more proactive approach. And there's actually research to support that, in terms of if we take those proactive interventions for well-being, that has a greater return on investment than if you take a reactive approach. And a reactive approach being when someone's in that mental ill health and you're sort of targeting initiatives then. And again, the same research showed that actually proactive and reactive together have the greatest return on investment, which probably makes a lot of sense, because you're supporting people when they're well so that they don't hit mental ill health, but if they do, you've absolutely got the support and the resources there to support them. So as I said, it's very much a spectrum, but this is sort of showing you that goal of positive psychology to help people flourish and not just forget about the people who might be at mental wellness stage, but supporting everybody no matter where they are on that spectrum and doing so proactively. And so moving on, what we also wanted to do, it's a webinar, we wanted to share our insights and our knowledge that we've gained in the world of work that we're doing, which is to a large extent supporting wellbeing in organisations. And so here we've got just a couple of insights, really, a couple of tidbits in terms of what we've noticed over the past year or so. And this is across public and private sector organisations in terms of those observations. So as you can see on the screen, the relationships, both in and outside of work, are often cited as sort of the biggest factor for supporting our well-being. And we're going to go on to talk about the PERMA model, and relationships is one of those pillars of the PERMA model. And as we have these conversations, relationships tends to be the point at which we have the most conversation, the most in-depth thoughts, feelings, experiences, spend the most time on this pillar. And so, you know, we're seeing that it's such a crucial part to play in supporting our well-being, is having other people around us to support you, whether it's colleagues, whether it's family, whether it's friends. That's a super, super important part to support our well-being. The second point that we've noticed quite a lot, and again, it will probably resonate with a lot of you, is around the pressures of time and workload in terms of being a barrier to positive well-being. And again, doesn't really take me by surprise that much that workload does seem to be getting higher across the board. We have only an infinite, we have a finite amount of time. I wish we had an infinite amount of time. We have a finite amount of time, and there's so much that we want to do. We've got work, but we've got our personal lives. And since COVID and the change of, you know, how we're living our lives, that element is becoming more important, and we're less wanting to squash our personal time to fit in more work. So actually we're feeling tensions between the two, and how do we fit in everything that we want to do without starting to feel stressed or worried or letting that have a negative impact on our well-being. And then finally, the last point that we've really noticed, we've worked with both leaders and non-leaders and teams and just groups of people, and we do really notice that leaders are often sort of foregoing their own well-being and their own sort of resilience to look after their teams and look after the well-being of their teams. So it's an interesting point there that actually we do see differences across different populations of people, you know, so those leaders are really making sure they're paying attention and supporting those other people, and that can come at the benefit of spending time thinking about your own well-being. And if you can't look after your own well-being, how can you look after someone else's well-being? You know, it's super, super important. And it's probably worth noting that these sort of observations that we've come across, and I'm sure you'll have many, many others that you'll have noticed that they probably resonate to some extent. But this is when we're having those conversations about that proactive approach to well-being and supporting it from a positive psychology perspective. We're not working in the space of sort of EAPs or mental health first aid, but having sort of conversation to support well-being. And these are the conversations that we see people are having. So moving on then, we're about halfway through the session. So now we're going to think about how can we start to proactively support wellbeing. We all get why it's important. We're all here for the same reason. So when we said that we want to make sure we're supporting wellbeing, no matter where you are on that mental health spectrum, how can we start to do that? And as I mentioned briefly earlier, we've got the PERMA model that we use in all of our work around wellbeing. It's super well researched. It was championed by Martin Seligman, and the PERMA model provides these 5 different pillars that can help us to support our wellbeing. So we start with positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. It's probably worth noting that one isn't more important than the other necessarily. There's no sort of research to support that. So all are equally as important. And in some of them we'll already feel quite high, and in some of them we might be able to do a little bit more work. We're all different and we're all unique, and we've all got very different circumstances. So that's why it's helpful to have a range of different things that we can use to support us in our well-being. And each one is developable, which is the key thing, is we can develop them if we need to support our well-being. So positive emotions, this isn't just happiness when we're talking about positive emotions, although, you know, feeling happy is a positive emotion, but there's a lot of other ones like pride, or you can feel excited, or you can feel even like relaxed, I would class as a positive emotion, you know. There's a lot of different ones, and if we start to really recognize what positive emotions are we feeling and labeling them as that, you know, that's when we can start to see how can we incorporate more positive emotions and start to really reframe how we see it over and above just happiness. Engagement is all about how we are engaging sort of in our work, and are we using our strengths. And we talked a lot about strengths in some of our other webinars earlier on in the week. So if you want to hear a bit more about that, then you can drop us a note for the recording. But our strengths are the things that we really enjoy doing and the things that we're also good at. So different behaviours that we're able to utilise both in work and in our personal lives. And when we're using our strengths, we're more likely to be engaged in what we're doing, and that leads to positive well-being as well. Already talked a lot about relationships, so I won't go into this too much, but those really positive, high quality connections that we have with others are really, really important aspect and pillar to support our well-being. The fourth one being meaning. So what is our wider purpose? Why do we do what we do? You know, what do we have as our values? What do we want to be focusing on to make sure that we're aligned to our values and to that wider purpose that we want to achieve? And it can be really easy to forget about that when we've got a high workload or lots of other things going on in our lives. So it's important to take some active time out to really think about that and make sure that, you know, the tasks that you're doing, the activities that you're doing, you know, it's all linked back to that wider purpose, or that wider goal, those values that you're looking to achieve in your life. And then finally, accomplishment, pretty straightforward, does what it says on the tin. If we feel like we're accomplishing things, that supports and boosts our well-being. But again, it's important to note here that actually it doesn't have to be big accomplishments. And sometimes we can really just wait till we do something big. So for example, at work, if you've got a really big project on and you don't celebrate it until it's finished, but actually you've done so many things as part of that project to get it to the finished state that you could have celebrated all of those sort of small milestones and small steps. And again, celebrating the small things sounds like a very simple thing to do, but it's very easy to forget as well when you're caught up in other things. And that's almost sort of the purpose of the PERMA model. It's almost just so simple. It's really easy to embed and use to support other people, and we can use it for ourselves, and we can do some self-reflection, or we can have conversations with other people if we're trying to support the well-being of others as well. So really simple and easy to use for absolutely anybody, but it's research and evidence-based, which is why we love it so much and why we use it as the foundation of that proactive support to well-being. And before I move on, I just thought I'd give a couple of quick tips for those that are listening, if anybody wanted some suggestions for how to put some of the PERMA model into practice. So you can do the 3 positive things piece that can support you sort of in that positive emotions and that meaning. You can look at a done list as well as a to-do list. I think a lot of us will have to-do lists which tell us all of the things that are still outstanding. And to be honest, that can be quite stressful if you've got a lot of different things on that to-do list. So why don't you have a done list or a to-da list where you're marking off all of those accomplishments that you've already done, you've already actioned, and it keeps you on track in terms of reminding you have achieved something today. No matter how big or how small, you'll be able to see that down as well as that to-do list. Or you could do a random act of kindness, which links into that relationships pillar. So, you know, random act of kindness means that there's no ulterior motive. You're not trying to get something sort of back for doing something nice. You could, I don't know, buy a chocolate bar and just give it to someone for absolutely no reason. I definitely done that a couple of times and the reaction is very nice. And if someone did that for me, it would make my day. So anyone listening that works with me, if you want to buy me a chocolate bar this afternoon, I'm here and I will accept it. But super easy, super quick, simple ways to target those different pillars for yourself and for others. Now moving on, I just want us to do a little pulse check. So as I said, the PERMA model is a really, really good, simple model to support well-being. And doing pulse checks around the different pillars, not just once, but frequently, and really coming back to this will help us to know where we need to focus in terms of the different pillars. As I said, we'll be strong in some, less strong in others, and that might change over time, which is why it's really important to come back to the pulse check and do it frequently. And you can do it yourself, you can do it with other people in your team, but it's that self-reflection piece. So you can see some statements there on the screen. Each one is linked to a different pillar. So the first one being positive emotions. I often feel positive at work. The second one being about engagement. So I regularly get absorbed in work and lose track of time. The third one being relationships. Got relationships in the statement, so I can't really hide that one. The fourth one being meaning, and the fifth one being accomplishment. So what I would love you to do, I've been talking at you a lot for the last sort of 25 minutes. So of the poll, using the question box, why don't you just drop me a note and let me know which one do you feel strongest in at the moment? Which pillar do you feel like is really supporting your well-being right now? Which one's highest for you, do you reckon? And I reckon there might be quite a range. I think for me, at the moment, I would say that my strongest one is probably 3. I mentioned to my team earlier at the beginning, I feel like I've got a lot of good relationships with the people around me at work, very, very supportive, and everybody looking after each other. So I'd go number 3. I can see quite a lot of people are also putting 3 as well. Someone has put, I feel all of them, which I love. Well, that's great. I mean, keep embracing that. That is amazing to be strong across all. Absolutely love that. Number 5 is also coming out quite strongly as the most important at the moment, or the strongest at the moment. So feeling like you accomplish something every day. And with that one, it's an interesting one because everybody accomplishes something every day at work, but it's whether you sort of recognize that and you feel that and you remember it. So, again, we do have all of these things. It's just reminding ourselves and reframing it in our minds. So yeah, as I said, lots of different ranges coming through in terms of what's most important. Someone's also said they've recently started a done list as well. So love that someone's already beat me to it before I've given you the tip. Hopefully it's working for you because it definitely works for me as well. So I love that you've already been doing that. So as I said, keep revisiting these types of polls, these pulse checks, these check-ins on where you're at on each of the different pillars, particularly during difficult times. So particularly if you are starting to feel like your well-being is slipping a little bit, you're stressed, there are different challenges around you, do keep frequently revisiting this because it can really help you. And again, as I said, you can do it on an individual or a group level, and a group level could be your team, it could be your organization. So yeah, absolutely sort of a simple way for you to check in on the PERMA model. So moving on to sort of take it wider from the PERMA model a little bit in terms of the work that we do here at Bailey & French and how we view supporting that proactive wellbeing piece is around the sort of the human experience. This is all about, as we said, humanizing that world of work, and there are other elements that can support wellbeing over and above sort of that PERMA piece. So you can see on here we've got human leadership and we've also got team flow. So human leadership is all about having leaders within organizations that are authentic, that are inclusive, and have those good relationships and good connections with the people that they're working with. So, when we've got leaders that are operating like that within the organization, that supports people to, have that psychological safety and therefore positive well-being. And human leadership, as I've already mentioned, we did run a webinar on this. So again, drop us a line if you want the recording for what human leadership looks like in some more depth. We can absolutely share that with you. But moving on, team flow, again, is another really important element. So in the PERMA model, relationships is one of the pillars. You'll also have noticed that I talked about relationships as part of human leadership. So team flow is all about those relationships and connections and cohesion in your team at work. Again, really important element of your well-being, that you feel like within your team, you know what you're contributing, you know how you fit in with everyone else at work, and that you're all working towards sort of a similar goal within your team, and that you're all sort of aligned to that. And again, that helps support our well-being as well as our performance. So these are the three different aspects, as well as that PERMA piece to support your well-being. But all of these different things sort of feed together to create that one human experience at work where we can help people to reach that flourishing state. So again, I just want to do a quick check-in with the group. So of those three things that I've talked about briefly in terms of sort of PERMA and specific wellbeing resources and interventions, talked about human leaders, so effective and supportive leadership, or sort of cohesive teams with that strong relationships. Again, it's a poll for you. Use the question box to respond to it, but which one do you think is most important for supporting wellbeing? Do you think it's those sort of specific interventions, the leaders around us, cohesive teams? You can say all of them. All of them might be equally important in your mind, but is there any that sort of stand out? So 3 is coming out quite strongly. So good teams, having strong cohesive teams with good relationships. You know, I mean, all of them have been sort of highlighted in some way or another. So we're getting 2s as well. A lot of people thinking that all of them are sort of equally important. An interesting point here around number 2, that actually that can be the one where it goes most wrong. In terms of having leaders that might not be as effective or supportive, or not as much of a human leader, and that might have the biggest impact on our well-being if that isn't done sort of in an effective way, which I think is a really interesting point as to why that one, you know, might be more important. So absolutely, I think based on the answers in the question box that I can see, we do know, and as I've said, all 3 of these are important for supporting our well-being. So we need some time to think about all of them to help us to flourish and thrive. And we're just wrapping up the session now, coming towards the end. So I've got one final question for you. As I said, you've heard some thoughts and insights from myself and from the work that we're doing here at Bailey & French. And now I want to hear from you in terms of what have you experienced at work to support yours or others' well-being that's been particularly effective in that arena. As I said, we're learning from each other, and I'll share around the suggestions at the end as well, in terms of what people are saying, because you know you can learn from each other. But what is the biggest thing that you've noticed to support your well-being? And it can be a specific intervention, or it could just be general behaviours that you've noticed or experienced. So we've got a suggestion here around just feeling that you've got levels of kindness and compassion within work, which is absolutely important, to feel like people are allowing us to be ourselves, and to come and, you know, if we're struggling, to say we're struggling. It's really, really important. Having a supportive line manager makes all the difference. Absolutely links back to that human leadership piece, that if we've got someone there as our champion, which our line manager should be, that can really help us. Access to webinars, resources, referrals, exactly that. You know, it's all about the proactive solutions and some of those reactive pieces as well. And if we've got the full range, that's how we can really have the best impact on our well-being. You know, open and genuine communication, absolutely. That transparency, that trust is created when people are open, and then people feel like they can be more honest and really tell you what's going on if they need to as well. We've got an amazing suggestion here, which I'm actually going to call out: a wellbeing calendar where they have a themed event throughout the month. I love that. That's so, so important. And it makes it a little bit fun as well, and it changes it up each month, so you've got something new and exciting to think about. So absolutely love that suggestion. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, thank you all for sharing. These are some really, really good suggestions. And again, sometimes it can be easy to forget some of these being quite simple, but if we spend some active time thinking about it, that's how we really create those inclusive, supportive environments. And so moving on, as I said, this is us in sort of wrapping up, but just a quick sort of shout out to say that we absolutely have a range of wellbeing solutions available for a range of different methodologies and situations to support wellbeing. As I said, we've done a lot of work in this space. So we've got a wellbeing strategy template that we can share to support people with creating wellbeing within organisations. We've got ready to go PERMA workshops that are facilitated, wellbeing for senior leaders, wellbeing one-to-one coaching. There's a range of different ways that you can support it. And as I said, a lot of this work is based on that PERMA model as an underlying foundation to support that flourishing and thriving. So a lot of different ways that we can support, and we can also develop tailored solutions as well if that is preferable. And that is it. That's me wrapping up. So I just want to say a massive, massive thank you for listening. If you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the question box. I'll stay on for a little bit longer if there is anything. You know, we've got a range of different resources, as I've said, so do go to our LinkedIn page where we've got sort of videos. We do Monday live sessions on LinkedIn every Monday morning, other resources that we share there. You know, do come and get in touch and see what else we've got. And we'd love some feedback on the webinar as well. So we've got a little QR code there that you can scan with your phone. Please do leave us feedback. Let us know what you liked, what you think we can do better next time, and suggestions for other webinars. I said this was the last one for Learning at Work Week, but this is not our last ever webinar. We will be absolutely doing some more. So do give us some tips and hints of what you might want to hear us talking about in future. We'd love the feedback, so please do share that with us. And as I said, we'll send around the recording, the slides, and the comments that we've had in the question box anonymized, so you can see what other people have been sharing and suggesting. And again, just a massive thank you. I'm staying on if there are any questions. Otherwise, that is us done for today.